Last week, we began with the poems of what I'll call the poems of the 3 weeks leading up to Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, with a poem by Anne Porter after Psalm 137. Today, we'll continue with a poem by Denise Levertov on a theme by Thomas Merton. Adam, where are you? God's hands palpate darkness, the void that is Adam's inattention, his confused attention to everything, impassioned by multiplicity, his despair. Multiplicity, his despair. God's hands enacting blindness. Like a child at a barbaric fairgrounds, noise, lights, the violent colors. Adam fragments himself. The whirling rides. Fragmented Adam stares. God's hands unseen. The whirling rides dazzle. The lights blind him. Fragmented, he is not present to himself. God suffers the void that is his absence. God suffers the void that is his absence. Now, this poem clearly focuses on two words, if you will. One is the word fragment. Adam is fragmented. He is confused. He is not focused. And that focus is what we call inattention. There is a lack on Adam's part, an inability to give attention to where attention is due. And where attention is due, of course, is attention to God, attention to his hands, God's hands, looking for Adam. And, of course, the 3 weeks focuses on a moment in time, on Tisha B'Av, where we will ask the question, Eicha, how was it possible? What happened to us? How did we abandon God? And how did God, if you will, abandon us? Where is this all coming from? Where is it dependent on? The word Eicha in Hebrew is spelled Aleph, Yud, Chaf, Hey. The first time a word with this spelling is found in all of Torah, it has a different pronunciation. And this commonality is marked, and the commonality of the story in which this word is contained, the word Ayeka, is actually the story of God searching for Adam in the garden after the first sin. And God says to Ayeka, where are you? Where are you? Looking for you. Now, Denise Levertov clearly was aware, this is simply a biographical point, she certainly was aware of her illustrious ancestor. She wrote a poem early in life called Illustrious Ancestors, and one of her two illustrious ancestors was Rav Shneir Zalman, the Rav of northern Russia. Why I put it that way is because if you look at that poem, you'll see that Denise Levertov was familiar or had read Martin Buber's Tales of the Hasidim, Tales of the Early Hasidim, read it in English, and was certainly aware of this story, which is found that I'm about to read in Buber, which is called Where Are You? Buber has, like any good teller of Hasidic stories, has added perhaps details and has fleshed it out in his way. But I want to read it to you because I'm sure that Denise Levertov read it. And somewhere, consciously or subconsciously, as many years later, she was writing the poem that we are now reading on a theme by Thomas Merton. She had this story in mind. Where are you? Rabbi Shneir Zalman, the Rav of Northern Right Russia, was put in jail in Petersburg because the Mitnagdim had denounced his principles and his way of living to the government. He was awaiting trial when the chief of the gendarmes entered his cell. The majestic and quiet face of the Rav, who was so deep in meditation that he did not at first notice his visitor. I'm adding in parentheses, he was completely focused. He had complete kavanah, intent, and attention to whatever this meditation was, suggested to the chief, who was a thoughtful person, the majestic and quiet face of the Rav, who was so deep in meditation that he did not at first notice his visitor, suggested to the chief, who was a thoughtful person, what manner of man he had before him. He began to converse with his prisoner and brought up a number of questions which had occurred to him in reading the scriptures. Finally, he asked, how are we, Rabbi, how are we to understand that God, the all-knowing, said to Adam, where art thou? Do you believe, answered the Rav, that the scriptures are eternal and that in every era, every generation, every man is included in them? I believe this, said the other. Well then, said the tzaddik, in every era God calls to every man, where are you? Where are you in your world? So many years and days have passed, of those allotted to you have passed, and how far have you gotten in your world? God says something like this, you have lived 46 years. How far along are you? When the chief of the gendarmes heard his age mentioned, he pulled himself together, laid his hand on the Rav's shoulder, and cried, bravo! But his heart trembled. Because God spoke to Adam, but God is speaking to him, as God is speaking to me now, and as God is speaking to you, the viewer and listener, now, and God is asking us, where are you? Ayeka, Aleph, Yud, Chaf, Hey. And if you are nowhere, and if you don't know where you are, and if you don't realize that wherever you are in the presence of God, then you are embarking on the dangerous journey that leads to Eicha. How did all this happen? Where does this all come from? Whatever disorder there is in my life, whatever fragmentation there is in my life, that is because I fragmented, I've lost focus. This issue of the loss of focus is the lack of attention, is what we would call the lack of kavanah. Kavanah means attention. I remember a story I once heard, I believe it's of the Balatanya, of Reb Shneir Zalman, Denise Levertov's illustrious ancestor, once asking his grandson, the Tzemach Tzedek, or perhaps the Hasidim, what does it mean to daven with kavanah? What does prayer with intent, proper intent, mean? And the Hasidim, or the Tzemach Tzedek, were giving whatever answer they gave, and there is much written and much said about intent in prayer, but the Reb Shneir Zalman said, no, you don't understand my question. What does it mean to have intent in prayer? What is there that we should not have intent? And of course, what is there that we should not have intent on God about? And this is actually the intent, if you will, or the true lesson of the Rambam in Hilchot Deot, the laws of character traits or virtues, in a, dare I say, a famous passage in the 3rd chapter, in which the Rambam says, Tzarich Adam, the Rambam, he says, I tried to remember it by heart, and I don't remember it by heart. Excuse me. The Rambam says, I do remember the reference, but Tzarech Adam, man must sheyechavein libo v'chol ma'asav kulam leidas Hashem. Man must direct, must intend, must focus all his deeds, his heart and all his deeds, everything on the knowledge of God. And the Rambam goes through mundane activities and how one focuses that mundane activity on the knowledge of God. And of course, in Hilchot Tshuva, Rambam gives his great allusion, remez, to the blowing of the shofar. And what is the function of the blowing of the shofar? The Rambam says, remez yeshbo, uru yesheni mishenaschem, wake up, you who are asleep, v'nir domim mitarde maschem, and those who are in deep sleep, tardema is an anesthetized sleep. Hakitzu mitarde maschem, chapsu b'mazreich masechem v'chizu b'tshuva, v'zichru borachem, wake up, return, remember you are your creator. Elu hasholchim, these are the people, hasholchim es ha'emes b'havlei hazman, who forget the truth, who forget focus in the vanities of time, in the substantialities of time. V'shogim kol shnatam, and they assiduously spend the whole year behevel v'rik asher lo yoil v'lo yatzil, in vanity and substantiality and emptiness, which will not save him, which will not save man. Focus. And a few years after this was written, when the Rambam composed the Guide for the Perplexed in Book 1, Chapter 2 of the Guide, the Rambam describes the sin of Adam HaRishon, that instead of focusing on ultimate matters of emet, of truth, which is Hashem Elokim emet, he began to get involved in focusing on other things, on tov v'ra, etc. And what that means, read the chapter in the Guide. Nonetheless, it's the loss of focus. And again, in one of the most classic Musar works we have of Ramosha Chaim Lutzato, the Mesilat Yesharim, read the beginning, the introduction, and you'll see it's all about the lack of focus on the really important things in life. Inattention is the lack of kavanah. It is not only about prayer, it is about everything in life. And oddly enough, in the poem, God, despite the man is inattentive, despite the fact that man becomes confused and absorbed in the whirling rides, in the circuses of life. God is looking for him. And we find two notions. We find first the idea of God in Hester Panim, in hiding from man who is hiding from God. Yes, that's true. And at the same time, God asks us to return. He is looking for us. Shuva Yisrael, Ad Hashem Elokecha. Return, Israel. And God welcomes us in his return. Eicha, how does it happen? It happens because God has to ask us, Ayeka, where are you? Because I am no longer standing in the presence of God in my mind and my heart. I am full of confused inattention, what today people sometimes praise, I know this might be a nasty thing to say, as multitasking. Okay. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should grant us the wisdom of knowing where we are and focusing on what we should focus on and saying to God, Hashem Svatai Tiftach, God, help me open my lips. Hashem Einai Tiftach, God, help me open my eyes to you, to you.